The CDC now says regardless of your vaccination status, you should go back to wearing a mask indoors if you're in an area with high COVID numbers. I'm Zach Dodge with Reaction.
More vaccine mandates announced as health officials scramble to contain the Delta variant. I'm Jonathan Seri in Atlanta. I'll have details coming up.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Jordan Abbey. The suspect in a Southwest Missouri kidnapping is arrested in Guatemala. Mohammed, a Somali national, is charged with kidnapping the 4-year-old daughter of Jessica McCormick of Knoll. McCormick's body was found in a suitcase in July of 2019 between Lanigan and Knoll. After identifying McCormick's body, authorities couldn't find her 3 kids. An informant told them Mohammed had taken the kids to Iowa, where he left them with a former co-worker. All 3 children were found safe. The father of the 4-year-old child told police Mohammed did not have permission to take the kids. Mohammed was indicted on a kidnapping charge in August of 2019 and was recently arrested in Guatemala, expelled from that country, and returned to the U.S. No arrests have been made in McCormick's death. Jasper County judge rules that a Joplin man who was charged with shooting 5 people back in 2016 is not guilty by reason of insanity. Attorneys for 31-year-old Tom Morning Jr. argued he was schizophrenic. They say because of his mental health, he was not aware of what he was doing. Morning opened fire at multiple locations. People and 2 comfort dogs inside an Emmanuel Lutheran Church Joplin van were among the injured. The assistant Jasper County attorney says all doctors who evaluated Morning believed he was mentally ill at the time of the shootings. A Seneca, Missouri woman is dead after a crash on State Highway 43, 4 miles north of Seneca. Missouri State Highway Patrol crash report says Crystal Ward was riding in a car that crossed into the path of a utility truck. Ward and the car's 2 other occupants were taken to the hospital. Ward passed away yesterday. Meteorologist Nick Kelly joining us now with first look at the forecast. Dangerously hot out there, Nick.
Yeah, so much so, Jordan, that as we hit our high of 96 for today with dew points in the mid-70s, I felt like it was 110 degrees in Joplin. That's how hot and humid it was after a very mild start of 74 degrees. That's why we had excessive heat warnings go into effect back at 11 o'clock this morning, and these will continue to take us through Thursday evening by 9 o'clock at this time. Most of us now are sitting in the mid-80s still, and it feels like we're in the lower 90s still. These are numbers that we'll have to repeat, unfortunately, again for tomorrow, Jordan, but I am tracking relief from the heat along the way. We'll break down the forecast here in a bit.
Nick Kelly, thank you as always. Mask requirements come back at a local health department as they see breakthrough cases. Yesterday, the CDC updated its guidance on face masks, saying that masks should be worn indoors in areas with high COVID-19 cases, like our entire viewing area, regardless of vaccination status. That's what the Barton County Health Department is now requiring. KOAM's Zach Dodge has details and local reaction to the CDC's update.
It's time to pick those face masks back up. That's what the CDC recommends everyone do indoors, even if they're fully vaccinated.
If you are vaccinated and you are one of those rare breakthrough infections, you actually have the capacity to pass it to somebody else.
And now it's a requirement at the Barton County Health Department.
Safety of our own staff and the people coming in here.
As of Wednesday, everyone who goes into the health department will have to wear a face covering. Administrator Joel Dermott says the change doesn't have as much to do with the CDC's new guidance, but instead because they were seeing the same alarming trends as the CDC.
We had been seeing some cases through contact tracing where we had breakthrough cases where people were fully vaccinated, and in doing that we were beginning to see some indicators that they were perhaps transmitting the virus themselves.
Masking has been a requirement at Freeman and Mercy hospitals for a while, as well as at Access Family Care. And the McDonald and Jasper County Health Departments have some form of mask requirement, whether it be for staff or patients. But at the Newton County Health Department,
we are currently optional on masks.
Administrator Larry Bergner explains all of his staff is vaccinated, and even though they've seen around 40 breakthrough cases in the county, viral spread at the health department itself isn't something he's concerned about right now.
We normally don't see the client load at one time. We don't have a packed building. Now, certainly if we start to see folks come in and we have a large number of clients at one time that's consistently that way, we might reevaluate.
And while both Dermott and Bergner understand why the CDC changed their guidance, they're concerned the change could push some people away from vaccination.
My message is get vaccinated to prevent illness, hospitalization, and death.
Zach Dodge, KOAM News.
We also reached out to Joplin Mayor Ryan Stanley, who says a mask mandate is not something the city is looking at this time. CDC is defending its decision to reimpose masking guidelines as more cities and states put vaccine mandates into place. Fox News correspondent Jonathan Seary has more from Atlanta.
New restrictions are going into place as a new COVID spike intensifies. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing Wednesday all state employees will need to get vaccinated or take a weekly COVID test. It's the latest in a growing number of vaccine mandates across the country. And President Biden is reportedly considering issuing a similar mandate for federal employees and contractors, putting some businesses in uncharted legal territory.
We don't know what's going to happen if someone is disabled and a doctor says that a vaccination could harm them more.
The announcement came just a day after the CDC recommended vaccinated people in COVID hotspots return to mask wearing in public. They're also recommending masks for students and teachers in classrooms. It's a big shift from previous guidance prompted by the fast spread of the Delta variant.
We've been following the science to see that there's much more virus that is in your nasopharynx when you're unvaccinated and you have Delta.
And as doctors plead with Americans to roll up their sleeves, some officials are trying new tactics. New York City will now give $100 to anyone getting their first shot at a city-run clinic, hoping to merge mandates with incentives and get more shots in arms.
We'll say we're really glad that you got vaccinated for yourself, for your family, for your community, and here's $100.
Pfizer released new data Wednesday showing a third dose of the company's vaccine offers a big boost to antibodies fighting off the Delta variant. In Atlanta, Jonathan Seary, Fox News.
Another study released today shows the Pfizer vaccine is only about 84% effective after 6 months. That's down from more than 90% effective in the days after the second shot. Only one day after it went into effect, a mask mandate in St. Louis County has been repealed. The mandate was discussed at last night's St. Louis County Council meeting, and many members of the public spoke mostly against the mandate. Several members of the County Council have spoken against the mandate, saying it violates a recently passed state law that requires input from a governing body, such as a county council. But others highlighted the importance of the mandate for public health. Freeman health officials are keeping a close eye on spreading cases of a contagious fungus. That fungus is called Candida auris. Cases of the fungus have been popping up in states around the country, including one in Missouri. That's according to the CDC. CDC considers the fungus a serious global health threat because it's resistant to multiple drugs. It can be misidentified in labs. It's caused outbreaks in healthcare settings.
Our general population experiencing maybe not the most robust immune response for lots of different reasons. And so that's just really allowing those superbugs to come in and capitalize on their maybe otherwise, weakened immune response. So people just need to know that those things exist.
CDC says the fungus causes infections in the bloodstream, wounds, and in the ears. Well, today marks the 150th anniversary of a milestone in the formation of Joplin, and some people gathered to mark the occasion. On this date, back in 1871, one of Joplin's founding fathers, John C. Cox, filed a plat known as Joplin City with the state of Missouri. That was 2 years before Joplin was actually incorporated, but lots became available for sale.
The spring that came out, since it was on his land, which he was leasing from Cox, they just came up with a name, so let's just call that Joplin Creek, or Joplin Spring, and then it would feed into Joplin Creek, and the Joplin name just remains.
Today's commemoration at the corner of Cox Avenue and Central Street was the site of the first plot sold. The buyer, by the way, Henry Blockwell, built a home there. KOAM News at 9 on Fox 14 takes this time to honor another four-state hero. Bob Meeker served in the U.S. Navy from 1951 to 55. Native of Columbus, Kansas, Meeker was stationed in Korea. We are proud to thank and honor second-class boiler technician Bob Meeker. He's tonight's four-state hero. Nick Kelly's on deck with a complete look at the forecast, and a bit later, Kansas City Chiefs hit in the field for their first full team practice of the hot summer. Gonna have the details in sports.
Very hot and very humid once again, something we've been saying a little too much ever since we got last weekend underway. So even though it didn't feel nice to be outside, at least it looked nice with quiet skies throughout the day, even with that passing cloud cover from indigo sky outside of Seneca, Missouri. As far as temperatures go, this is Joplin Regional's numbers over the past 36 hours, easily back into the mid-90s yesterday, dropping back to mid-70s this morning. Back to 95, if not 96, at Joplin Regional for today. So again, that hot and humid trend continued. And even though it doesn't look like a lot happening, we haven't had much to track all day in terms of clouds or rain. But this is our big weather headline. The excessive heat warnings. These went into effect before we hit the noon hour today, and this will continue for much of the region until 9 o'clock tomorrow night. But even if you honor the excessive heat warning, this is dangerous heat and humidity that wants to stick around for tomorrow, and I see this lasting into Saturday ahead of our next cold front on the way in. So before the front gets here with any rain and relief from the heat, I think the worst time, which is what Doug's been saying the past few days now, the worst time to be out and about in the heat and humidity is between 2 in the afternoon until about 6 o'clock in the evening. Before that time and after 6 p.m., that's when the numbers back off a little bit and makes it a little bit more tolerable to, let's say, walk the dog or exercise outside. But it's still warm and muggy outside. 85 in Joplin, feels like 93 with dew points sitting in the mid-70s. And that goes for the entire area, quite frankly. 80 to 85, those are the range of numbers across the board. You factor in these dew points in the mid to upper 70s. I don't even need to show you the scale, how soupy that is. And it makes it feel like it's still 94 in Columbus and Chanute, 93 in Lamar, 90 in Greenfield, and 94 down in Siloam Springs. And we're going to continue on because I want to show you the weather setup. We know there's nothing happening here. Thunderstorms really ramping up across much of the state of Wisconsin ahead of our next front. The severe weather won't make it, but the front causing those storms to the north, that's going to be what will roll in as we head into Saturday night and Sunday, but we have to wait for this upper level ridge to break down. As long as that's still in control, we're going to stay warm for the next few hours and only drop back into the mid-70s, so maybe a brief respite from the heat to get your Thursday morning started. But like today, look at how fast the numbers crank back up into the mid and maybe for some of you in the upper 90s. So 75 in the morning, 91 by noon, highs near 96. And this is why the excessive heat warnings are in effect for much of you tomorrow. It's not just because highs will be around 96 across much of the region. The humidity stays high, so it'll make it feel like it's 103 to about 111 during the peak heating of the afternoon. And even though we do back off on the humidity a little bit for Friday afternoon, still going to be hot and humid with it feeling like 100 to 105 degrees during the course of the afternoon. Fortunately, this does not last for much longer though. Even though the alert days are still in place for the heat and humidity Thursday through Friday, make that Saturday, look at Saturday evening and Sunday. That's when that front to the north rolls in. I'm not concerned about severe weather, but we'll have those thunderstorm chances knock us back into the mid-80s on Sunday and staying in the mid-80s into early next week, Jordan, and thankfully nights with lows back in the mid-60s.
Yeah, you use the word soupy. It sounds disgusting and it feels disgusting right now outside.
Yeah, I think no other way to put it.
No. Nick Kelly, we'll see you in a little bit. Thank you so much. Coming up, an important vote in the Senate.
A vote to debate a bipartisan infrastructure deal passes in the Senate. I'm Mallory Rivera in Washington with the other hurdles this bill faces coming up.
Key vote taking place today in the Senate on a bipartisan infrastructure deal. The legislation is now one step closer to becoming a reality, but there's still a few roadblocks in the way. Fox's Madeline Rivera has a closer look at negotiations in D.C.
The yeas are 67, the nays are 32.
A vote on the bipartisan infrastructure package clears a major hurdle in the Senate. Lawmakers can now begin debating the legislation that calls for roughly $550 billion in new spending.
We are going to get the job done, and we are on track.
Several Republicans voted in favor to proceed after negotiating with Democrats for weeks. The plan includes $110 billion in funding for roads, $65 billion for broadband expansion, and about $50 billion for flooding and coastal resiliency.
I am amazed that there's some who oppose this, just because they think that if you ever get anything done, somehow it's a sign of weakness.
The Biden administration believes it will help create millions of jobs and help the United States compete with China.
While there's a lot we don't agree on, I believe that we should be able to work together on the few things we do agree on.
Even with success in the Senate, the bill faces challenges should it reach the House. Democratic leadership doesn't plan on moving forward with the infrastructure bill without first passing a $3.5 trillion budget proposal that progressives want, with funding aimed at child care and education.
The American people are not going to get a win if we simply invest in roads and bridges but don't take on climate change. If we simply say we're going to create good jobs but we don't allow women to get back into the workforce.
A big portion of how this infrastructure bill will be paid for is expected to come from unused COVID relief dollars, worth more than $200 billion. In Washington, Mallory Rivera, Fox News.
Up next, President Biden's plan to buy more American products.
Both President Biden and the head of the Federal Reserve both talking about the economy and ways to boost it. I'm Lauren Blanchard in Washington. I'll have more details coming up.
President Biden visited a Pennsylvania manufacturing plant today as he rolls out a new push for American-made goods. His administration is trying to help boost the economy and U.S. businesses as inflation rates and the resurging pandemic threaten to cut into gains made in recent months. Fox News correspondent Lauren Blanchard has more from Washington.
President Biden stepped off Air Force One and into a Pennsylvania Mack truck facility.
I just came to drive a truck.
He's trying to rev up support for U.S. manufacturing.
I can sum it up in 2 words: Buy American.
The administration has already required the federal government increase its purchase of American-made goods. The president announced they will change the threshold for what counts as an American-made good. 60% of any product must be made with U.S. manufactured components, up from 55%. Their goal is by 2029, the goods will be 75% U.S. manufactured components.
Substantially all is going to mean substantially all.
The Pennsylvania visit, part of the president's push for a massive infrastructure bill and for more vaccinations to help the economy.
Please, 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 if you're not vaccinated, protect yourself and the children out there.
Meanwhile, at the Federal Reserve, they have decided to keep interest rates near zero as the economy recovers. Chairman Jerome Powell says the inflation is running above 2%.
Inflation has increased notably and will likely remain elevated in coming months before moderating.
Republicans say it's Democrats' spending policies sending inflation soaring.
The problem is not just Democrats' jaw-dropping $3.5 trillion price tag. It's also the long list of bad liberal policies that this reckless taxing and spending spree is supposed to purchase.
Chairman Powell said most industries have gotten better but still not fully recovered. He said the labor market still has a long way to go. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Coming up, Patrick Mahomes breaking another record. Sorta. The record price paid for a Mahomes football card when we come back. Mahomes broke a new record. This time he didn't have to do much, really. A Mahomes autographed trading card sold for $4.3 million, the most ever for a football card. Yeah, the 2017 rookie Mahomes card was sold through the PWCC marketplace. It broke the previous record for a rookie Tom Brady card, sold for $3.1 million. The buyer, by the way, of the Mahomes card chose to remain private. Take a look at this, a unique discovery at a South Carolina state park. Yeah, a two-headed baby turtle. The discovery happening on Edisto Beach State Park. Park officials saying the two-headed turtle is likely a result of a genetic mutation. Other two-headed turtles have been found in this area before, but this discovery was a first for this particular sea turtle patrol group. That's awesome. The stuff you find in nature, right? 30 more minutes, news, weather, and sports coming your way.
Simone Biles will not defend her Olympic all-around title as mental health takes center stage at the Games. I'm Lauren Green in New York. I've got the details coming up.
Severe western droughts are putting fish and wildlife stock in serious danger. I'm David Spunt in Washington with more on the financial impacts it could have on the country. That's coming up.
Have to live out west to be impacted by the extreme drought raging on there. Fox News correspondent David Spunt has more on how millions of fish and wildlife are at risk because of the heat and the financial impacts their death could have on your wallet.
Severe drought conditions continue plaguing much of the western United States, with California experiencing its worst drought in 2 decades. And the low water levels combined with extreme heat are proving perilous for many critical fish and wildlife stocks. In Northern California, the race is now on to save millions of baby salmon. Environmentalists say water conditions in some of the state's rivers are not suitable for these fish to survive.
River conditions were not good. It was low oxygen, warm temperatures, low flow, and high pathogen loads.
Instead of releasing them into the wild, they're loading them into cooler, cleaner hatcheries to be protected. And with experts predicting more than 80% of young fish in California's Sacramento River could die from the rising water temperatures, the Fish and Wildlife Department is issuing new advisories to help avoid unnecessary deaths for any fish caught and released.
The warm water and the warm temperature, you want to try to not put as much stress as you can on the fish.
Meanwhile, the drought is also affecting cattle. Limited water supplies are forcing farmers to reduce the number of crops they plant this season, hay being one of them. The problem is causing ranchers to contemplate selling off many of their herds, simply because they don't have enough hay to feed them. Fewer salmon in rivers and less cattle on ranches this year could spell future economic trouble for the agricultural and seafood industries, causing next year's commercial fishing season to be shortened and the price of beef to spike. In Washington, David Spunt, Fox News.
Well, the Arvis Foundation, part of Arvis Bank, today donated a check to Charlie Tutu Outdoors, an organization that serves local veterans. Charlie Tutu Outdoors takes veterans on retreats where they can go hunting, fishing, and other outdoor activities, fun stuff. But those retreats cost money. So the Arvis Foundation donated money to pay for them.
There's a bond that takes place because they've got a brotherhood from being in the military. And then the event takes place, and by the time the event is over, the walls will come down, and they'll tell us their stories, where they've been, what they've seen, what they've done. And relationships are formed that are lifelong after that point.
In total, the Arvis Foundation donated $4,015. Performers with the Pittsburgh Community Theater are doing their final run-throughs before their shows on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They're performing Xanadu. It's a story about a Greek muse who descends from Mount Olympus to Venice Beach, California, on a quest to inspire a struggling artist to create the first roller disco.
Oh, we are so excited for a live audience to be in this space, seeing all of this stuff that people have been working for ages on. Some of it is the same that we have been working on for the 2020 production, and some of it is brand new.
The first performance is 7:30 on Friday, with 2 more performances on Saturday and 1 on Sunday. Tickets will cost $15 per adult and $12 for seniors and kids. The Better Business Bureau has some tips for college students to avoid fraud during the upcoming school year and beyond, for that matter. First, make sure you store important documents under lock and key. Never lend your credit card or debit card to anyone. And Pittsburgh Campus Police also advise being wary of credit card offers.
More times than not, it's because we've divulged too much information unknowingly by doing what I was saying before, clicking on an email or clicking on a website that maybe is not there for legitimate purposes.
The BBB also says check your credit report at least once a year with all 3 reporting bureaus for any suspicious activity or inaccuracies. Heads up here, McCormick is recalling 3 of its seasonings over possible salmonella contamination. Take a good look here. The seasonings include Perfect Pinch Italian, Culinary Italian, and Frank's Red Hot Buffalo Ranch. Select Walmart, Target, and Kroger stores sold the products. If you have one, McCormick says throw it away, and you can contact the company for a full refund. A bit later, a Ben & Jerry's controversy.
Ben & Jerry's is front and center at the United Nations this week after the company announced it would no longer sell ice cream in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. I'm Trey Yingst in Jerusalem. I've got the inside scoop on the controversy coming up.
Ever since we started this past weekend, we have stayed hot and we have definitely stayed humid. That certainly applies for today. Even though it looked nice from Indigo Sky Casino and Resort outside of Seneca, Missouri, even with some passing cloud cover throughout the day, it was one of those days where it definitely looked nice, but it did not feel nice at all to be outside. Just like yesterday, where we saw highs topping out in the mid-90s. We took a dip, if you want to call it that, back into the mid-70s this morning. And then we hit 95, 96 degrees once again, very similar to, if not just a hair warmer compared to yesterday. So even though we do not have a single cloud cover or clouds to track outside, not to mention any showers or thunderstorms until the weekend, this is our main weather headline. These excessive heat warnings for the vast majority of the region until 9 o'clock tomorrow evening. But even if you're not under the excessive heat warnings, you're not completely spared from the heat and humidity for tomorrow. The heat advisories also fill in the rest of those gaps. And I think this is heat that can stick around until Saturday. Then once we hit Saturday night and Sunday to wrap up the weekend, that's when we finally start to see some much needed relief from the heat. But again, there's another evening where it may look nice, that may not feel nice though. 85 in Joplin with a calm breeze. Feels like 93 though, thanks to that dew point still up there at 75 degrees. And that applies for much of the region. 80 at Fort Scott to 85 in Chanute, downtown Joplin, Neosho, and Anderson. So everyone is right in that range between 80 and 85. But you factor in these dew points, look at how absurd these numbers are. Pushing an 80-degree dew point in Fort Scott. Needless to say, we're jumping well beyond the soupy end of the dew point tracker scale. So no wonder it still feels like the lower, if not mid-90s, even before we hit the top of the 10 o'clock hour. Fortunately, we're going to stay quiet for tonight. Not the story for these explosive thunderstorms across Wisconsin. Those don't affect us, but the front triggering those storms, that's what comes into play as we go toward the latter part of the weekend. That front won't come our way, though, until we see this upper ridge break down. Until it does, that's what keeps us quiet for tomorrow, but that's what also keeps us hot and very humid. As we see temperatures drop back into the mid-70s by tomorrow morning, most of us around 75. Even with some partly sunny skies trying to pass on by, it's going to be just like today. Hot and very humid. 75 in the morning, 81 by noon, and highs near 96. Now, it may feel like the mid-70s to start the morning out, but once the humidity really cranks into gear, kind of like today, between 102 and 110. That's what it's going to feel like against the skin as you try to venture outside to do anything, work or recreational. But here's Saturday, though. Notice how the ridge starts to get pushed back toward the west. That's what finally allows that front to slide on through, and we find ourselves back on the cooler side of the jet. And we're going to be very thankful for that, because that means mid-80s from Sunday to take us into early next week. We're going to be thankful for that break in the heat, Jordan. But in the meantime, though, alert days for tomorrow through Saturday because of the heat and humidity. Highs in the mid-90s. We'll hold off on any rain chances until Saturday night.
That heat is intense.
Yeah, it just barely lets up during the night.
Yeah. Nick Kelly, thank you so much. All right, coming up in sports, Kansas City Chiefs hitting the field for their first full practice at training camp. Also, St. Louis Cards finishing their series against Cleveland. Jacob Leonard joins us with that and more next.
Today is the first day of the season for the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs hold their first full team practice today at training camp in St. Joe, Missouri. And one of the main storylines this offseason is the team's rebuilt offensive line. Now, among the changes in the line, they traded for Orlando Brown, drafted Creed Humphrey at center out of Oklahoma, and signed left guard Joe Thuney from the Patriots. Now, Thuney talked today about adjusting to new faces and also working in the Missouri heat after starting his career in the Northeast.
Didn't realize Missouri got this hot, but it's been great, and everyone's just grinding out there. And great group. We hang out a lot off the field in the locker room, always talking, laughing, joking. So they're a great group, a lot of great guys, and it's just being out here. It's just kind of an isolated bubble, and it's great to spend all the time with the guys and just keep building every day.
Today is Football Media Day for the Kansas Jayhawk Conference in Wichita. Here's a look at the preseason coaches poll. No surprise, Hutchinson is at number 1. Independence in their second season under head coach Jason Martin picked to finish 3rd. Coffeyville sits at 5, while Fort Scott, heading into their first full season under coach Carson Hunter, is at number 8. Well, today is the opening day of the Kansas American Legion Senior Baseball Tournament in Pittsburgh. Now, the hometown Post 64 group is on the field in the final game of the night tonight, facing the Hayes Eagles. Now, there are 8 teams in this tournament. They'll crown a state champion on Saturday. Now, leading off the first, Cameron Williamson through the right side for the single. However, he would end the inning standing on third. Now, bottom of the inning, Hayes gets 2 on, but Williamson works out of it with the ground ball. The game still scoreless after 1. And after a leadoff double from Brett Sutterby in the second, Trevor Amershek to the right side. Not only does he beat it to first, but he gets the RBI with Sutterby scoring. Post 64 has its first lead. That game's still going right now. Pittsburgh leads at 5-0 in the second. Well, St. Louis Cardinals wrap up a quick 2-game set with Cleveland today. And the Cardinals took game 1 last night 4-2 behind a Paul DeJong go-ahead homer in the 7th inning. And after this one, St. Louis returns home for a 9-game homestand beginning on Friday. The Cards up 1 in the second until Franmil Reyes puts it out for the solo homer for Cleveland. Actually goes out of the stadium. It's a 1-1 game. St. Louis back in front in the third. Dylan Carlson dead center. Solo homer, his 11th. Cards lead 2-1, but from there, Cleveland rolls. Cesar Hernandez with a man on, his 18th home run of the season. Cleveland back in front. Cardinals drop this one today, 7-2. The Kansas City Royals are on the field for Game 3 of their series against the Chicago White Sox tonight. Now, Chicago got Game 2 last night to snap the Royals' 6-game winning streak. Now, tonight's game still going. It's in the top of the 9th inning. Royals trail at 2-1. Jorge Soler has an RBI double for Kansas City. That's a look at sports. We're back with more news after this.
And Jerry's is front and center at the United Nations this week after the Vermont-based company announced it would no longer sell ice cream in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst has the inside scoop from Jerusalem.
When companies implement your resolutions, they should not be criticized. They should be saluted.
The United Nations Security Council is debating what actions to take after Ben & Jerry's announced it would no longer serve ice cream in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. A Palestinian official to the UN's highest body says the company should be saluted, while the Israeli ambassador called Ben & Jerry's decision part of an anti-Semitic boycott.
These companies have no moral reservations about operating in countries which are truly among the world's worst violators of human rights.
The ice cream giant, which has a history of taking progressive stances, made the announcement last week, saying it was inconsistent with their values to sell their products in Israeli-occupied territories. The move was seen as one of the highest-profile snubs by a well-known company against Israeli settlements. In its own statement, Ben & Jerry's parent company, Unilever, said it was fully committed to its presence in Israel, but also recognized the right of the brand to take its own position on social justice missions. Ben & Jerry's withdrawal will not take effect immediately, as its contract with the vendor that produces its ice cream in Israel doesn't expire until the end of next year. The licensee in Israel moved quickly to distance itself from its long-standing partner.
I refuse it as an Israeli and as a manufacturer and company that lives here. There's no way I can say no to Israeli citizens.
Not everyone in Israel will be deprived of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. The company says it will continue to sell its products within Israel's pre-1967 borders. In Jerusalem, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
Next, going to get some news about a new Ghostbusters movie, plus some other Hollywood news coming your way. A new look at the next Ghostbusters movie, plus Paris Hilton's new cooking show, and more. Paris Hilton has a lot of hot pans. That's hot. That's hot. That's hot. Fox's Ashley Dvorkin takes a look at the Hollywood Nation.
Oh, pardon me.
Forgive me.
The Duke of Hastings' new role, a Martin-filled murder mystery, and who you gonna call in the Hollywood Nation. Something's coming. A new trailer for Ghostbusters Afterlife gives a look at the next supernatural super sleuths. Directed by Jason Reitman, produced by Ivan Reitman, the film brings Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, and McKenna Grace into the universe. The story is set in a small town where a family discovers their grandfather's ghost-busting legacy and is in theaters November 11th.
Bridgerton! Come here, old friend.
According to The Hollywood Reporter, Bridgerton star Regé-Jean Page will star in and executive produce Paramount's reboot of The Saint. Saint is based on the early 20th century adventure novels with previous adaptations including Val Kilmer in the 1997 film.
Paris Hilton.
Netflix gives a first look to Cooking with Paris Hilton and friends, showing off their non-professional chef skills starting August 4th.
We're gonna go down there and look around for...
Plus, Hulu releases a new trailer for the comedic mystery Only Murders in the Building, starring Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. The trio play neighbors with a true crime obsession, caught up in a case after a death in their Manhattan building inspires their podcast. The first 3 episodes premiere August 31st. Oh! In Hollywood, Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
Steve Martin, good actor right there. That's our time for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Going to leave you with a video of a baby lemur at the San Diego Zoo. Be safe. Do this all again tomorrow. See you then.